In the black, freezing currents of the global ocean, a shadow is moving. It does not navigate by sight. It does not hesitate. It moves through the dark water with the quiet weight of an absolute, unchallenged monarch. And yet across the expanse of human history, this creature has chosen a path that defies every rule of the wild. A predatory masterpiece that looks into our eyes and decides to spare us. The water pressure at 70 feet down is immense, but the pressure inside the mouth of a hunting apex predator is lethal. An adult killer whale possesses a jaw mechanism engineered for pure mechanical destruction. The skull is dense, reinforced at the base to absorb massive kinetic feedback. When the jaws close, they deliver a crushing force of over 19,000 newtons. That is not just a bite, it is a hydraulic press. The target does not bleed out. Its skeletal structure simply collapses under the weight of the impact. Look at the wear on the teeth of an older individual. The enamel is ground down to the gum line, a testament to decades of breaking the thick, fibrous skin of deep-sea prey. They do not chew. They grip, tear, and swallow whole chunks of flesh. Biologists still debate whether the unique curvature of the lower jaw evolved specifically to prevent large prey from slipping away during high-speed underwater struggles. The design is flawless. Stand close enough to the edge of a research vessel during a hunt, and you can hear the dull underwater thud of those jaws locking shut before the splash even hits the hull. The camera catches the sudden explosion of white water, then nothing but a dark oil slick rising to the surface. It is a clinical execution. The hunt ends in a fraction of a second because the mechanics of the strike allow for zero margin of error. Nothing escapes the grip. Nothing survives the crush. The torpedo shape is not an accident of nature. It is a refined hydrodynamic masterclass. An 8-ton body should struggle to move through a dense fluid medium, yet this creature cuts through the water at speeds exceeding 35 miles per hour. The secret lies in the specialized skin structure and the immense power of the tail flukes. The muscles driving the tail are thick, dense cords of red muscle fiber capable of sustained explosive bursts of energy that leave standard marine mammals far behind. From above, the hunting pod looks like a cluster of dark missiles cutting through the blue. The movement is perfectly smooth, generating almost no turbulence as they accelerate toward a target. This extreme efficiency allows them to match the pace of the swiftest dolphins, turning a high-speed chase into a test of absolute endurance. They do not tire easily. The circulatory system is heavily optimized, pumping oxygen-rich blood directly to the core muscles during a sprint. Some researchers believe the black and white markings actually disrupt the visual perception of water flow, making it difficult for prey to judge the true speed of the approaching predator until it is too late. The speed is a weapon in itself. It allows the hunter to ram large targets with the force of a small truck, incapacitating them before the actual teeth are deployed. It is a relentless, fast-paced pursuit that transforms the open ocean into a highway of death. The chase is short. The outcome is inevitable. The largest animal to ever exist on Earth is not safe. A blue whale can grow to over 90 feet in length, weighing more than 100 tons, yet a coordinated pod will hunt it down over the course of several agonizing days. The strategy is not based on brute strength, but on calculated, exhausting teamwork. They take turns swimming alongside the giant, biting at its pectoral fins to disable its steering and ramming its flanks to cause deep internal damage. It is a slow, methodical wear-down process. The hunters work in shifts, ensuring that some members rest and feed while others maintain the pressure, never allowing the massive cetacean a moment to catch its breath. Biologists still debate how the pod communicates these complex roll rotations across miles of open ocean during a prolonged siege. The coordination is chillingly precise, resembling a military operation more than an animal attack. Imagine standing on the deck of a ship watching the horizon turn into a churning battlefield of red water and white foam. You see the massive blue back rise for air, only to be immediately covered by 3 or 4 black fins pressing it back down. They are trying to drown a giant. By blocking its blowhole and forcing it under, they turn the whale's own massive need for oxygen against it. When the blue whale finally gives up, the pod celebrates not with frenzy but with a highly organized selective feeding ritual. Off the coast of South Africa, a new kind of terror has emerged in the water. The great white shark, long considered the ultimate nightmare of the sea, has found its own executioner. The killer whale does not engage in a messy, chaotic fight with this apex fish. Instead, it uses a highly specific surgical technique to extract the shark's nutrient-rich liver, leaving the rest of the carcass completely intact and discarded on the ocean floor. The attack is over before the shark even understands the danger. The hunter approaches from a blind spot below, striking the shark with enough force to turn it upside down. This sudden inversion triggers a natural state of paralysis in sharks, known as tonic immobility. Once the great white is helpless, the orca makes a precise tear near the pectoral fins, squeezing the body until the oily, energy-dense liver pops out like a cork from a bottle. Up close, the precision of the wound looks almost artificial, as if performed with a human scalpel rather than rows of conical teeth. Scientists still aren't sure how this highly specialized feeding habit spread so rapidly across different pods in the region, but the results are undeniable. The local white shark populations have completely abandoned their traditional hunting grounds out of sheer terror. The master of the reef has been reduced to mere prey, hunted by an intelligence that treats them like a simple menu option. The frozen shorelines of Antarctica offer no sanctuary for the birds that live there. Along the jagged edges of the ice shelves, gentoo and emperor penguins gather in large numbers, hesitant to enter the water because they know what is waiting just beneath the surface. The killer whales patrol these coastal drop-offs like sentries, keeping their massive dorsal fins submerged to avoid detection while watching the ice line above for any sign of movement. When a penguin finally dives in, the ambush is instantaneous. The orca uses the deep, dark water beneath the ice shelf to hide its approach, accelerating upward in a vertical rush that leaves the bird no time to maneuver. It is a game of high-speed agility versus raw power. The penguin twists and turns, trying to use its small size to escape, but the predator matches every shift with slight, precise movements of its large pectoral flippers. From the ice above, the chase looks like a flash of black and white, turning the clear water into a swirling vortex. There is a brief, desperate scramble, a small splash, and then the water clears to reveal a lone predator gliding away. The hunt is clean, efficient, and conducted with a casual ease that demonstrates the absolute dominance of the hunter over its environment. The birds are simply fuel collected with the routine regularity of a machine gathering raw materials. The concrete walls of a marine park tank hold more than just millions of gallons of artificial salt water. They hold a profound, simmering madness. Tilikum, a massive 12,000-pound male captured off Iceland, became the symbol of what happens when a highly social, wide-ranging apex predator is stripped of its family and confined to a space that resembles a bathtub. The lack of acoustic stimulation and the forced proximity to unrelated individuals created a toxic psychological environment. The consequences were tragic and historic. Over his decades in captivity, Tilikum was involved in the deaths of 3 human beings, demonstrating an aggressive, calculated hostility that is virtually non-existent in the wild. He did not attack out of hunger. He attacked out of frustration, targeting trainers who had spent years working closely with him, dragging them into the depths of the pool and refusing to let them surface. Stand near the glass of a captive enclosure, and the silence is heavy, broken only by the unnatural rhythmic clicking of a whale staring at its own reflection. The camera records the collapsed dorsal fin, a physical manifestation of stress and confined boredom. Researchers still debate the exact psychological breaking point that turned this majestic animal into a lethal liability. But the message was clear to the world. A mind built for the open ocean cannot be contained within concrete without fracturing into violence. February 24, 2010, changed the public perception of marine parks forever. During a live lunchtime performance at Shamu Stadium in Orlando, an experienced trainer named Dawn Brancheau was interacting with Tilikum at the poolside. In a sudden, horrifying motion that took place in front of a horrified audience, the giant male grabbed the trainer by her ponytail and pulled her into the deep water. What followed was not a brief accident, but a prolonged, violent display of captive psychosis. Tilikum held the trainer underwater, actively resisting all attempts by the rescue staff to intervene or distract him with food nets. He dismantled the human body with a methodical, cold aggression that shocked even the veteran animal care staff who had known him for 20 years. The illusion of the friendly performing show animal was shattered in less than an hour. The corporate response was immediate damage control, but the cultural impact was irreversible. The incident forced a global conversation about the morality of keeping large, intelligent cetaceans for human entertainment. The public finally saw that behind the painted stadium walls and the cheerful music lay a frustrated, massive predator capable of immense violence when pushed to its absolute limits. The tragedy proved that no amount of training can fully erase the wild, dangerous nature of the sea's top hunter. A healthy coral reef or coastal kelp forest is normally a chaotic wall of sound. Fish grunt, shrimp snap, and seals bark in a continuous, noisy symphony of marine life. But when a hunting pod of killer whales enters the area, the entire ecosystem undergoes an immediate, terrifying transformation. The vocalizations of the predators' sharp, metallic clicks and high-pitched whistles slice through the water column, signaling an immediate threat to every living thing within miles. Then comes the silence. The normal background noise of the ocean drops to near zero as every potential prey item freezes, hides in the rocks, or flees toward the shallowest bays. It is an acoustic paralysis born of pure survival instinct. The seals stop barking, the fish bury themselves in the sand, and the sea lions gather in tight, silent rafts near the surf line, hoping to avoid attracting the attention of the passing killers. From a diver's perspective, the sudden drop in sound is palpable, a heavy pressure that signals the arrival of something truly dangerous. The water becomes still, empty, and expectant. Biologists still debate whether this absolute silence is a passive reaction by the prey or a deliberate result of the orcas' acoustic dominance, effectively freezing their targets in place through sheer intimidation. The presence of the king silences the court completely. Deep in the open ocean, where the water drops down to thousands of feet, the largest toothed predators on Earth face an enemy they cannot outfight alone. When a group of sperm whales hears the distant, distinct clicks of an approaching killer whale pod, they do not attempt to dive to safety. Instead, they gather at the surface, pressing their massive bodies together to form a tight, circular defensive formation known as a marguerite. The whales arrange themselves like the spokes of a wheel, heads pointed inward toward the center, and their massive muscular tails facing outward toward the danger. This formation protects their vulnerable heads and creates a barrier of heavy thrashing flukes that can crack an attacker's ribs. The calves and younger individuals are kept safely in the middle of the ring, shielded by the massive bulk of the adults. Stand on a research boat looking down through a wide lens, and the scene is epic in scale. You see a fortress of flesh floating in a dark blue void surrounded by agile black shapes that dart in and out, looking for any gap in the wall. The orcas will circle for hours, trying to agitate the adults into breaking the formation so they can target a calf. It is a slow, psychological battle between the absolute defense of the giants and the relentless patience of the hunters. In the high Arctic waters where the pack ice creates narrow lanes of open water, the narwhal faces a hunter that turns the ice into a trap. When a pod enters these northern hunting grounds, they do not simply chase the tusked whales. They herd them into shallow bays where their movements are restricted. The attack that follows is characterized by a brutal, mechanical efficiency that highlights the physical power of the predators. The orcas target individual narwhals, separating them from the group and using their weight to pin them against the rocky bottom or the jagged edge of the ice. Once the prey is secured, they use their teeth to strip the thick, blubber-rich skin from the living animal. They do not kill the target immediately. Instead, they focus on removing the most nutritious parts of the body while the narwhal is still struggling. Up close, the scene is a stark reminder of the cold reality of nature. The water turns red against the white ice as the hunters work with methodical, unhurried movements. Researchers still debate why these northern pods display such specific aggressive feeding behaviors compared to their southern counterparts. But it is clear that the harsh Arctic environment requires a high-energy return for every hunt. The narwhal is dismantled with the cold precision of an industrial process. The annual migration of the grey whale is a grueling 10,000-mile journey, but the most dangerous segment occurs along the coast of California. Here, deep underwater canyons provide the perfect ambush points for resident killer whale pods, that wait specifically for the arrival of mothers traveling with newborn calves. The hunt that unfolds is a classic test of physical endurance, pitting the mother's protective instinct against the boundless stamina of the pack. The hunters do not make a head-on assault. They swim alongside the pair for hours, matching their speed and continuously bumping into the calf to separate it from its mother's side. Every time the mother tries to steer her calf toward the safety of the shallow kelp beds, the orcas block the path, forcing the pair back out into the deep water, where the hunters have the tactical advantage. The chase can last for over 6 hours, covering miles of open sea, until the exhausted mother can no longer lift her calf to the surface to breathe. The orcas take turns leaping onto the calf's back, using their multi-ton weight to force it underwater until it drowns. It is a heartbreaking spectacle of natural cruelty, where the relentless momentum of the pod eventually breaks the spirit of one of the ocean's most dedicated parents. Off the beaches of Punta Norte and Patagonia, the shoreline is not a place of safety for young southern elephant seals. It is a specialized killing zone where a select group of killer whales has mastered a technique that defies the normal boundaries between sea and land. The predators intentionally drive their massive bodies out of the water and straight onto the pebbled beach, risking stranding themselves to grab a pup from the surf. The timing must be absolutely perfect. The hunter rides a breaking wave inward, using the momentum of the water to carry its multi-ton weight up onto the wet stones where the seals are playing. In a single fluid motion, the jaws snap shut around a target, and the whale uses a violent side-to-side thrashing movement of its tail to slide back into the safety of the deep water. From a camera position low on the dunes, the sight is spectacular and terrifying. You see a massive black fin emerge from the white foam rising high above the dry land before crashing down onto the beach. One light, humorous line where it fits. It is the ultimate real-world version of a monster jumping out of the closet, except this closet is made of wet pebbles and sea foam. The young seals stand no chance against a predator that can invade their terrestrial sanctuary at will. The psychological impact of the orca extends far beyond the water's edge. Along the coastlines where elephant seals gather to breed, the mere appearance of a single black dorsal fin cutting through the offshore waves can trigger a massive panicked stampede among the animals on the beach. Even though they are massive creatures weighing several tons themselves, the seals know that the water offers no safety when the top hunter is patrolling. The panic is contagious. One adult seal spots the fin, emits a low guttural warning roar, and immediately begins scrambling toward the higher dunes away from the waterline. Within seconds, hundreds of seals are moving in a desperate mass, trampling smaller pups in their haste to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the incoming tide where the shadow was spotted. Scientists still aren't sure how the seals can distinguish the specific shape of a killer whale fin from that of a harmless basking shark at such long distances, but the accuracy of their fear is absolute. They will remain high on the beach for days, refusing to enter their natural feeding grounds until they are certain the hunters have moved on to another part of the coast. The shadow alone is enough to clear the water completely. When hunting large marine mammals like porpoises or smaller whales, the killer whale often puts aside its teeth and relies entirely on raw physical impact. An adult male can weigh up to 8 tons, and when that massive mass is accelerated to 30 miles per hour, it becomes a biological projectile capable of delivering catastrophic blunt force trauma to any living tissue it strikes. The attack technique is precise. The orca rams the target directly in the ribcage or the internal organs, using its hard, dense snout like a battering ram. The impact is so severe that it can fracture the prey's skeletal structure, rupture its liver, or cause massive internal bleeding without even breaking the skin. The target is instantly incapacitated, left floating helplessly in the water column while the hunter circles back to finish the job. Up close, the sound of the collision is a deep, hollow boom that reverberates through the hull of nearby research vessels. The camera captures the target being launched completely out of the water by the sheer force of the blow, spinning through the air before crashing back down into the foam. It is a display of pure, unadulterated power that reminds any observer why this creature sits unchallenged at the very top of the global marine food chain. One of the most wasteful and puzzling behaviors observed in killer whale hunting pods is their extreme selectivity when consuming large prey. When a group successfully takes down a massive baleen whale After hours of intense effort, they do not consume the entire carcass. Instead, they often eat only the massive fat-rich tongue and lower jaw fat, leaving the remaining 90% of the meat to sink to the dark ocean floor. The tongue of a grey or blue whale is a massive organ weighing several tons and containing an incredibly high concentration of pure blubber and nutrients. For the orcas, this represents the highest caloric reward for the least amount of digestive effort. They use their teeth to neatly peel the tongue away from the jaw, working together with an eerie efficiency that leaves the rest of the giant body completely untouched. From above, the discarded carcass looks like a pale ghost drifting down into the deep blue trenches surrounded by clouds of scavenging fish and seabirds. Biologists still debate whether this selective feeding is a luxury allowed by an abundance of food or a necessary energy-saving strategy to avoid consuming low-value muscle meat. Whatever the reason, it leaves a trail of massive, skeletal remains across the migration routes of the world's largest animals. In the wild, killer whales live in highly integrated, peaceful family units, where physical aggression between pod members is almost never observed. However, the artificial environment of marine park enclosures changes their biology and behavior in ways that are deeply unsettling to researchers who study their natural social structures. When individuals from completely different geographic populations are forced into small tanks together, the natural social order collapses entirely. The result is a phenomenon known as captive psychosis. Without the space to retreat from conflict or the guidance of an experienced matriarch, the animals develop severe behavioral abnormalities, including chronic tooth grinding, self-mutilation, and intense, violent bullying of subordinate tank mates. The cooperative family members seen in the wild are replaced by stressed, unpredictable anomalies that frequently injure each other with raking tooth marks. Imagine watching two massive animals trapped in a small concrete circle, circling each other with tense, stiff postures while emitting high-pitched, aggressive screams that are never heard in the open ocean. The camera records the deep scars along their flanks, physical proof of the constant, unresolved tension that defines their daily lives in captivity. It is a stark reminder that removing an animal from its cultural context can destroy its mental stability completely. The tail flukes of a killer whale are not just for propulsion. They are highly effective lethal weapons used to stun or kill smaller prey with incredible accuracy. During a hunt for salmon or herring, an orca will drive itself into the center of a school and deliver a single powerful lateral slap of its tail, creating a localized shockwave in the water that instantly disables dozens of fish at once. When applied to larger prey like seals or porpoises, the force of the tail strike is devastating. A single deliberate blow from the muscular fluke can cause severe internal hemorrhaging, break the spine, or knock the target completely unconscious. The hunter uses the momentum of its entire body to swing the tail like a massive club, striking the target with pinpoint precision while swimming past at high speed. Stand close enough to the action, and you can see the white water explode as the tail cuts through the surface with a loud whip-like crack. The target animal is often thrown several feet into the air, its body completely limp before it even hits the water. The efficiency of the strike allows the orca to neutralize threats or secure food without risking any damage to its own head or jaws during the encounter. Because their primary prey consists of other marine mammals that must surface to breathe air, killer whales have developed a hunting tactic that focuses entirely on suffocation. When attacking seals, sea lions, or smaller whales, the pod members will work together to physically hold the target beneath the surface of the water, using their own massive bodies as weights to block any attempt by the prey to reach the air. The tactic is a slow, relentless exercise in patience and power. One orca will position itself directly on top of the target while others swim underneath to prevent it from diving away or escaping to the side. They rotate positions regularly, ensuring that the target is constantly pinned under a wall of heavy flesh until its lungs fail and it drowns in the dark water. From a wide aerial shot, the struggle looks like a dark, boiling patch of sea where a lone, desperate animal occasionally tries to push its snout through the foam for a single breath of life. The hunters remain calm, heavy, and unyielding, using gravity and water pressure as their primary weapons. It is a cold, calculated method of execution that demonstrates a deep, operational understanding of their prey's physiological limitations. Not all killer whales behave the same way in the water. The transient ecotype, which specializes exclusively in hunting marine mammals, operates with a level of stealth that earns them the reputation of underwater phantoms. Unlike the resident pods that constantly click and whistle while searching for fish, transients swim in complete eerie silence, masking their acoustic footprints to avoid alerting their highly sensitive mammal prey. They navigate by passive listening, tuning their massive hearing systems to catch the faint sounds of swimming seals or splashing porpoises miles away. They can travel for hours without emitting a single vocalization, moving through the coastal channels like a submarine fleet running dark. They even synchronize their breathing patterns, surfacing briefly in unison to minimize the splash and sound of their blowholes. Scientists still aren't sure how these silent hunters coordinate their complex tactical movements without using sound, but some researchers believe they rely on subtle physical cues or prearranged hunting formations passed down through generations. Stand on a quiet, foggy shoreline and you will hear nothing until the explosive rush of a transient pod breaking the surface right in front of you. They are masters of the unseen approach. The impact of a single killer whale hunt can rewrite the ecology of an entire coastal region for months at a time. In 2017, after a pair of male orcas successfully killed several great white sharks off the coast of Gansby, South Africa, the remaining shark population did something unprecedented. They completely fled the area, abandoning one of the premier shark feeding grounds on the planet within 24 hours. The eviction was permanent for that season. Electronic tracking tags showed that individual great whites swam hundreds of miles away into the deep ocean, choosing to risk the barren open sea rather than stay in the presence of the mammalian hunters. The departure of the top fish triggered a massive ecological ripple effect, allowing local seal populations to expand their movements and changing the entire balance of the local marine environment. From a wide satellite view, the sudden movement of these apex sharks looks like a mass evacuation from a disaster zone. The ocean floor is left silent, the cages of shark tourists hang empty in the water, and the dark fins of the orcas remain the only dominant shapes on the horizon. It is a powerful demonstration that in the global ocean there is only one true ruler, and even the most feared monsters of our nightmares will run for their lives when that ruler arrives. The dark, opaque depths of the high-latitude seas offer zero visibility, yet a hunting orca navigates this visual void with absolute clarity. It uses a biological echolocation system so highly refined that it functions like an internal three-dimensional medical scanner. By pushing air through its nasal passages, the creature produces a series of rapid, high-frequency clicking sounds that travel through its forehead and project outward into the black water. These acoustic waves bounce off objects in the environment and return to the hunter, traveling through its fat-filled lower jaw directly to its middle ear. This is not just a method for detecting distance. The resolution of the returning echo is so fine that it allows the predator to read the internal anatomy of its target, revealing the size density and even the skeletal structure of a fish hiding beneath the mud. From a camera position deep below, you see the massive predator tracking a salmon that is completely invisible to the human eye, adjusting its course with slight twitching movements of its head. The acoustic beam functions like a high-definition flashlight in a dark room. Researchers still debate whether the animal can intentionally increase the power of these clicks to stun smaller fish with a concentrated blast of sound. It is an uncanny sensory reality that transforms the pitch-black ocean into a transparent, fully mapped landscape where no secret can be kept from the hunter. Inside the dense, heavy skull of an adult killer whale sits an organ that challenges our basic understanding of intelligence. The brain of an orca can weigh up to 15 pounds, making it roughly 4 times larger than a healthy human brain. It is not merely a massive mass designed to control a large body. Its structural complexity is astonishing, featuring a surface area that is deeply wrinkled and convoluted far beyond our own. The cerebral cortex, which governs higher cognitive functions, problem-solving, and social awareness, is highly developed. This massive neural architecture allows them to process complex acoustic data and manage intricate social relationships within the pod simultaneously. Up close, the physical scale of the brain is humbling, filling a massive cranial cavity with a network of billions of dense neurons. Scientists still aren't sure how much of this massive processing power is dedicated to functions completely alien to human experience. One light, humorous line where it fits. While humans use their massive brains to build rockets and worry about their taxes, the orca uses its mental supercomputer to coordinate the perfect underwater ambush. The sheer volume of their grey matter indicates a rich, internal mental life that operates on a scale we are only beginning to comprehend. It is a vast, ancient intellect wrapped in layers of blubber. The true mystery of the cetacean mind lies within a specialized region of the brain known as the paralimbic system. In humans, this area processes basic emotions and social connections, but in the killer whale, the paralimbic lobe has expanded into an entirely unique anatomical structure that does not exist in any other terrestrial mammal. It is an evolutionary development that links their emotional processing directly to their cognitive centers. This anatomical expansion suggests that their experience of social cohesion, empathy, and family bonds is intensely magnified, operating at a level of complexity that human language cannot accurately describe. The individual does not exist in isolation. Its very identity is hardwired into the collective consciousness of the pod. Biologists still debate whether this hyper-developed brain structure allows them to feel a form of grief or loyalty that is far more profound than our own. Stand close enough to a stranded individual and you can feel the intense, overwhelming distress radiating from its calls as it reaches out to its family across the shallow surf. The camera captures the constant frantic movements of its eyes, scanning the empty shoreline for its kin. They are emotional giants moving through the sea with a deep, interconnected sensitivity that makes their captive confinement in small, sterile tanks an act of profound psychological cruelty. Their minds are built for a grand collective existence. The bold, striking coloration of a killer whale appears highly visible in the clean light of a public aquarium, but in the natural ocean it functions as a brilliant camouflage system known as countershading. The stark division of jet black and pristine white fields splits the multi-ton body into separate, unidentifiable shapes, effectively melting the massive predator into the background of the sea. From above, the solid black back blends perfectly with the dark, bottomless depths of the deep ocean floor, making the animal invisible to seabirds and seals resting on the surface. From below, the bright white underbelly matches the shimmering, light-filled surface of the water, preventing deep-swimming fish from noticing the shadow passing overhead until the jaws open. It is a visual illusion designed to deceive targets from every angle. Imagine standing on a high cliff, looking down into the green coastal waters, trying to track a resident pod. You see a flash of white, then nothing but a dark smudge that disappears into the shadows of the kelp forest. The pattern even distorts the true size of the animal, making it difficult for prey to judge which direction the predator is turning during a high-speed chase. The camouflage transforms an 8-ton monster into a shifting optical ghost. Because they are voluntary breathers who must consciously choose to surface for air, killer whales cannot afford to lose consciousness the way land mammals do. To survive in an environment that requires constant vigilance, they have evolved an eerie physiological mechanism known as unihemispheric slow-wave sleep. They rest only one half of their brain at a time, keeping the other half fully awake to monitor their surroundings. During these rest cycles, which can last for several hours, the orca will swim in a slow, synchronized pattern alongside its pod members, moving forward in a rhythmic cadence that requires no conscious steering. One eye remains tightly closed, corresponding to the resting hemisphere of the brain, while the other eye stays wide open, scanning the dark water for potential threats or changes in the current. Up close, the sight of a sleeping pod is deeply uncanny, resembling a fleet of ghost ships moving through the fog in perfect silence. The camera captures the steady mechanical rise and fall of their blowholes, breaking the surface without a single splash. Researchers still debate how this split brain mechanism allows them to maintain deep emotional bonds and navigate complex coastal networks without ever experiencing the total unconsciousness of true sleep. They are eternal sentries, never fully asleep, always watching. The mouth of an adult killer whale contains between 40 and 50 heavy, interlocking conical teeth that are built for pure physical retention. Unlike the flat molars of land mammals or the serrated blades of sharks, these teeth are smooth, dense spikes of solid bone and dentin, curving slightly backward toward the throat to prevent any gripped object from slipping forward. The teeth are arranged in a perfect alternating pattern between the upper and lower jaws, locking together like the iron gears of a heavy industrial machine when the mouth closes. This structural design is not intended for chewing or grinding flesh. The purpose is to clamp down on a struggling animal with enough force to hold it steady, while the multi-ton weight of the whale's body drops, tearing massive chunks of meat away through sheer leverage. From a camera position right at the waterline, the opening of those jaws reveals a dark, cavernous space lined with ivory spikes that have been stained yellow by the oils of countless prey. You can see the deep grooves where the teeth have rubbed against each other over decades of violent hunts. The structural density of the bone allows them to withstand the intense, twisting forces of a thrashing sea lion without snapping, ensuring that once the grip is established, the struggle is effectively over. To a human observer, the world is defined by sight and smell, but to a killer whale, the universe is built entirely of acoustic architecture and physical vibration. During their long evolutionary transition from land mammals back into the sea, these creatures completely lost their olfactory bulbs and scent organs, rendering them entirely incapable of smelling anything in their environment. This complete lack of scent is compensated for by an auditory system that is arguably the most sophisticated on the planet. The auditory cortex is massive, processing sound frequencies that extend far beyond the range of human hearing into both infrasound and ultra-high frequency realms. They do not need to smell a drop of blood in the water because they can hear the panicked heartbeat of a seal from miles away. Biologists still debate whether their highly sensitive tongue can detect chemical changes in the water column that mimic a sense of taste. But the primary reality remains acoustic. Stand on the deck of a research vessel in a heavy storm, and you realize that while you are blinded by the spray and rain, the pod below is navigating the submerged reef with absolute precision, mapping every rock and current through the texture of the echoes. They swim through a world of pure sound. The most iconic silhouette in the natural world is the 6-foot-tall dorsal fin of an adult male killer whale. This massive structure contains no bone or muscle. It is composed entirely of dense, fibrous connective tissue and cartilage, built to withstand the immense hydrodynamic pressures of the open ocean. It functions as a stabilization rudder, keeping the massive body balanced during high-speed turns. In the wild, the fin stands perfectly straight, held rigid by the internal pressure of the tissue and the continuous flow of water around it. However, when an individual is kept in captivity, the lack of space and the constant swimming in small circles causes this structure to lose its tone, leading to a complete collapse of the fin over the side of the body. It is a striking visual marker of confinement. From above, the fin looks like a dark sail cutting through the grey swells of the North Pacific, leaving a clean wake behind it. The shape and size vary significantly between individuals, allowing researchers to identify specific whales from miles away. Scientists still aren't sure if the fin plays a secondary role in regulating body temperature during long sprints, but its primary purpose is clear. It is the structural anchor that allows an 8-ton predator to maneuver with the agility of a creature a fraction of its size. Survival in the polar regions requires an exceptional insulation system, and the killer whale possesses one of the most efficient thermal blankets in the animal kingdom. Beneath its sleek skin lies a layer of dense, fat-rich blubber that can be up to 4 inches thick, wrapping the entire skeletal structure in a continuous sheath of metabolic energy and warmth. This blubber layer does more than just protect the core organs from the freezing temperatures of subarctic waters. It acts as an energy reservoir during long migrations across barren stretches of ocean and provides structural buoyancy that helps the heavy animal float without expending precious muscle energy. The tissue is crisscrossed by a complex network of blood vessels that can constrict or expand to regulate heat. Up close, the texture of the blubber is remarkably firm, feeling more like dense industrial rubber than soft fat. The camera catches the slight heavy ripple of the flank as the whale crashes through a wave, absorbing the impact without any damage to its internal systems. Researchers still debate how this thick insulation layers reacts to the heavy accumulation of human-made chemical toxins that store themselves permanently inside the fat cells, turning their own survival mechanism into a ticking biological clock. When an orca surfaces to breathe, the sound is a sudden explosive blast that can be heard for miles across a quiet bay. This sound is the result of a hyper-efficient respiratory system that leaves human lung capacity far behind. In the fraction of a second that the blowhole clears the water, the creature exchanges over 90% of the air volume in its lungs. By comparison, a healthy human only exchanges about 15% of their lung capacity with each breath. The lungs of the killer whale are reinforced with rings of flexible cartilage, allowing them to collapse completely under the intense pressure of deep dives without tearing or causing internal trauma. The blood chemistry is equally specialized, containing exceptionally high levels of myoglobin and hemoglobin to lock oxygen tightly into the muscle tissue. Stand close enough to the blowhole as the whale exhales, and you are hit by a warm, fine mist of seawater and oil that leaves a distinct scent on your clothes. The movement is incredibly fast, a rapid puff of white air, a deep gasp, and the muscular flap closes shut before the next wave washes over the head. This rapid gas exchange allows them to maintain their intense, high-speed hunting chases, with only brief momentary breaks for air at the surface. Deep inside the muscle tissue of the lower abdomen, completely disconnected from the main skeletal structure, lie two small curved bones that serve as a profound testament to the ancient history of life. These are vestigial pelvic bones, the evolutionary remnants of hind limbs that belonged to the four-legged land mammals from which all modern whales descended 50 million years ago. Over millions of generations as their ancestors abandoned the shorelines and committed fully to a life in the open sea. The legs withered away, the spine elongated, and the pelvis shrank into these floating fragments of bone. They serve no purpose in locomotion or support, yet they remain embedded in the flesh, a silent anatomical record of a radical biological transformation that rewrote the rules of mammalian survival. Biologists still debate whether these tiny bones have been repurposed to support reproductive organs in adult males, but their primary significance is historical. Look at a full skeletal reconstruction of an orca, and you see a massive forward-driving machine of ribs and vertebrae balanced by these two tiny shards of history floating near the tail. It is a chilling reminder that the master of the modern ocean was once a creature that walked upon the earth, changing its form entirely to conquer the deep. One of the most distinctive features of the killer whale is the bright white oval patch located just behind and above each eye. To a human observer, it looks like a beautiful decorative marking, but in the chaotic environment of an underwater battle, it functions as a highly effective tactical deception system designed to protect the animal's most vulnerable sensory organs. The true eye of the orca is actually quite small, dark, and hidden entirely within the solid black coloration of the head, making it nearly invisible to prey. The prominent white patch sits several inches higher, mimicking the appearance of a massive open eye. When a desperate seal or a large fish attempts to strike back at the predator's head in self-defense, it invariably aims for the bright white patch, missing the actual eye completely. From a side-profile camera angle, the illusion is striking, creating the impression of a creature that is constantly staring forward with a massive, unblinking glare. This misdirection ensures that the hunter can engage in violent, close-quarters combat with dangerous prey, like horned sea lions or sharp-finned sharks, without risking permanent blindness from a lucky counterattack. The marking is a piece of evolutionary armor painted directly onto the skin. While they are primarily surface-dwelling hunters, killer whales are fully capable of diving to depths exceeding 1,000 feet in search of bottom-dwelling fish or deep-sea squid. To survive these excursions into the cold, crushing dark, their bodies rely on a specialized blood chemistry that acts as a natural scuba tank, storing immense concentrations of oxygen directly within the liquid tissue. Their blood volume is proportionally much larger than that of land mammals, and it contains an exceptionally high concentration of red blood cells packed with hemoglobin. Furthermore, their muscle tissue is saturated with myoglobin, a specialized protein that binds oxygen so tightly that it turns the muscles a dark, almost black color. This allows them to store oxygen where it is needed most during a deep descent. Up close, the physiology of a diving orca shows an immediate drop in heart rate, a process known as bradycardia, which restricts blood flow exclusively to the brain and heart, while leaving the outer muscles to operate on stored tissue. Oxygen. The camera captures the slow, rhythmic pulse of the animal as it enters the deep trenches, moving with a calm, energy-saving grace that allows it to remain submerged for over 20 minutes without a single gasp of air. It is a chemical masterpiece. The smooth, glass-like texture of a killer whale's skin is essential for maintaining the high speeds required to run down swift marine prey. To ensure that their bodies remain completely free of friction-causing parasites, algae, or barnacles, these creatures possess a skin cellular structure that regenerates at a rate that is completely unprecedented among large mammals. An orca sheds its outermost layer of skin cells roughly every 2 hours, a continuous sloughing process that keeps the surface of the body incredibly smooth and perfectly hydrodynamic. The skin is virtually devoid of hair and contains specialized microscopic ridges that channel the flow of water across the flanks, preventing the formation of turbulent eddies that could slow the animal down during a sprint. Scientists still aren't sure how much energy this constant cellular renewal demands from their metabolism, but the results are visible in the brilliant, mirror-like sheen of their bodies as they break through the surf. 1 every 2 to 5 facts comparison. To maintain this level of absolute smoothness, an orca sheds more skin tissue in a single week than a human being does in an entire lifetime, keeping its outer shell as slick as a freshly polished fiberglass hull. The skin is a living shield against friction. The rounded, bulbous forehead of the killer whale is not filled with muscle or bone. It is occupied by a massive specialized organ composed of dense lipids and fats known as the melon. This tissue acts as an acoustic lens, taking the chaotic high-frequency clicking sounds produced in the nasal passages and focusing them into a narrow, directed beam of sound that projects forward into the water. The lipid composition of the melon is not uniform. It varies from the center outward, creating a gradient density that bends the sound waves, much like a glass lens bends light. This allows the hunter to control the shape and direction of its echolocation beam, narrowing it to track a single distant target, or widening it to scan an entire reef for movement. It is a masterpiece of organic physics. From an aerial shot, looking down at a hunting individual, you can see the forehead twitch slightly as the whale adjusts the focus of its acoustic search, sweeping the beam across the murky water column like a searchlight. Biologists still debate whether the animal can use the melon to amplify its vocalizations to such an extent that they can disorient the nervous systems of nearby schooling fish. The melon transforms raw sound into a precise operational tool. Looking at the side of a killer whale's head, you will see no visible ears or external flaps that could disrupt its sleek hydrodynamic profile. Instead, the external ear opening consists of a tiny, nearly invisible pore located just behind the eye, a hole no larger than the tip of a pencil that has completely lost its connection to the internal auditory canal during the course of evolution. The creature does not hear through this tiny hole. Instead, sound waves traveling through the water are captured by the dense, fat-filled bones of the lower jaw, which function as highly effective acoustic conductors. These vibrations are channeled directly from the jawbone to the middle ear complex, which is structurally isolated from the skull by a cushion of dense foam to prevent the whale's own vocalizations from blinding its hearing. Up close, the sensitivity of this system is staggering, capable of detecting the faint, low-frequency hum of a ship's propeller from over 20 miles away across the open sea. The camera records the sudden synchronized turn of a pod as they catch the distant call of an unrelated family group, responding instantly to a sound that a human hydrophone can barely register. Their universe is defined by a deep acoustic clarity that turns the dark ocean into a web of interconnected voices. To drive an 8-ton body through freezing water at high speeds requires an immense amount of metabolic energy, and the engine at the center of this system is a massive muscular heart that can weigh up to 200 pounds. This organ is built with heavily reinforced ventricular walls capable of pumping gallons of thick, oxygen-rich blood through the vascular system with every single beat. The heart rate of an orca is highly adaptable, shifting from a slow, energy-saving pulse of 15 beats per minute during a deep, deep dive to an explosive 90 beats per minute during a high-speed surface sprint. The vascular network is equipped with a specialized structure known as the rete mirabile, a dense mesh of blood vessels that stabilizes blood pressure and protects the brain from sudden spikes during intense physical exertion. Stand on the deck of a research vessel during a necropsy of a deceased individual, and the sheer scale of the heart is overwhelming, requiring multiple scientists just to lift it from the chest cavity. The camera captures the thick, rubbery texture of the main arteries, which are wide enough for a human child to slide their arm inside. This massive, muscular pump is the physical foundation of their apex status, providing the endless stamina that allows them to hunt down the largest creatures on Earth without tiring. The spatial awareness of a killer whale is not limited by what its eyes can see. Moving through the deep, murky channels of the Pacific Northwest or the dark trenches of the North Atlantic, these creatures maintain a permanent, three-dimensional mental map of their entire underwater territory, relying on a combination of generational memory and real-time acoustic scanning. They understand the exact topography of the ocean floor, the locations of deep kelp forests, the narrow gaps between submerged rocks, and the shifting boundaries of shallow sandbars that could trap a lesser animal. This mental map is so precise that a pod can navigate a complex, hazardous underwater maze at maximum speed in absolute darkness, without ever striking a single obstruction or losing their formation. From above, the pod moves through a narrow rock channel like a single, coordinated organism, turning in perfect unison around hidden reefs that are completely invisible from the surface. Researchers still debate whether they can sense the subtle variations in the Earth's magnetic field to help them maintain their orientation across thousands of miles of open sea. Their connection to their physical geography is absolute, a deep instinctual architecture that transforms the wild ocean into a familiar home. The skeleton of a killer whale is not light or fragile like that of a bird or a small land mammal. It is a dense, heavily reinforced framework built to withstand the intense physical trauma of close-quarters hunting. The ribs are wide, flat, and exceptionally flexible, connected to the spine by thick cushions of cartilage that allow the chest cavity to compress safely under pressure or absorb the shock of a high-speed collision. The vertebrae of the spine are massive discs of solid bone locked together by dense networks of ligaments that provide the intense leverage needed to swing the massive tail flukes against a struggling target. This structural density is particularly pronounced in the skull and snout, which act as a heavy biological shield during ramming maneuvers against larger whales or sharks. Up close, the weight of an orca skull is immense, requiring mechanical winches to lift during scientific studies. The camera records the thick, unyielding texture of the bone, which shows no signs of fractures or wear, even after a lifetime of striking multi-ton targets at 30 miles per hour. This skeletal strength ensures that the predator can use its own body as a blunt weapon without risking self-destruction during the encounter. If you were to look through an X-ray lens at the large paddle-shaped pectoral flipper of a killer whale, you would find an anatomical structure that is deeply familiar and profoundly unsettling. Encased within the smooth black skin and thick blubber of the flipper lies a complete skeletal hand featuring a radius, an ulna, a wrist joint, and 5 distinct, elongated finger bones known as phalanges. This skeletal architecture is an exact match for the pentadactyl limb structure found in humans, monkeys, and all other land-dwelling mammals. The bones serve no purpose for grasping or manipulation. They are locked tightly together within a rigid casing of connective tissue functioning exclusively as a steering oar to guide the multi-ton whale through the water. It is a physical echo of their ancient land-dwelling past. Stand in a museum hall beneath a suspended orca skeleton, and your eyes are invariably drawn to those massive skeletal hands hanging where front legs should be. The camera pans from the massive predatory jaws down to those delicate human-like fingers locked inside the flipper. It is a powerful visual reminder that despite their alien lifestyle and terrifying apex power, these creatures share a deep common ancestry with us, carrying the bones of a land walker into the deepest trenches of the global sea. In the frozen expanse of the Antarctic, a seal resting on a floating chunk of ice appears completely safe from the dangers of the deep. But the ocean holds no sanctuaries when a resident pod of killer whales decides to hunt. The predators do not attempt to scramble onto the unstable ice shelf. Instead, they leverage the fluid dynamics of the water itself, transforming a gentle swell into a targeted, localized tsunami. The pod lines up side by side in a flawless military formation, swimming forward at a synchronized pace just below the surface. As they approach the ice floe, they dive in unison, flicking their massive tail flukes downward to drive a massive wall of white water directly over the ice. The wave sweeps across the frozen platform, cracking the structure in half and washing the panic-stricken seals straight into the waiting jaws of the remaining pod members. From above, the swarm is a dark river against the green, moving with a cold mechanical precision that leaves no room for survival. 1 every 2 to 5 facts comparison. This coordinated surge carries the kinetic force of a small flash flood, hitting the ice with enough concentrated energy to lift a vehicle, translating the scale into something an American listener can hold, picture, or feel with their hands. Scientists still aren't sure how the pod coordinates their swimming rhythm to build the perfect wave height, but the execution remains an absolute masterclass in calculated physics. The coastal fringe where the open sea meets the dry stones of Punta Norte is a treacherous boundary for any marine mammal. Here, the local killer whale populations have developed an ambush method that breaks the traditional laws of cetacean survival. They don't just swim near the coast. They intentionally drive their multi-ton bodies out of the water column and straight onto the pebbled beach to catch sea lion pups playing in the shallow foam. The maneuver requires absolute split-second timing and a profound understanding of tidal patterns. The hunter rides the crest of a large breaking wave inward, using the momentum of the water to slide its massive belly across the slippery stones. In a fraction of a second, the jaws snap shut around a target, and the whale uses a violent, side-to-side thrashing movement of its fluke to slide back into the safety of the deep before the next wave retreats. Up close, the jaws close in a fraction of a second, leaving the remaining pups to scramble toward the high dunes in a state of absolute terror. Biologists still debate whether this high-risk strategy is a universal instinct or a highly specialized cultural tradition limited to a few specific families who pass the skill down through intense training. One light, humorous line where it fits. It is the ultimate real-world version of a monster jumping out of your bathtub, completely rewriting the rules of what constitutes safe ground. The great white shark is built to dominate its environment through sensory acuity and raw predatory power, but its biological armor contains a hidden systemic flaw. When a shark is forcibly turned completely upside down, its nervous system experiences a sudden, overwhelming sensory overload that triggers a natural state of total paralysis known as tonic immobility. The local killer whale pods do not fight the shark. They exploit this neurological vulnerability with chilling intelligence. The attack is executed with zero hesitation. The orca approaches the shark from a blind spot directly below, striking the fish with enough localized force to disorient its balance. Before the shark can react, the predator grabs it by the pectoral fin and flips its entire body over, holding it upside down in the water column for several minutes until the shark's muscles go completely limp and its breathing slows to a crawl. From a camera position low on the reef, you see the massive predator holding the feared monster of the deep as easily as a dog holding a bone, completely neutralizing its defenses before making a single wound. Researchers still debate whether this tactic was discovered by accident or through a deliberate process of trial and error over generations of encounters. Once the paralysis takes hold, the hunter proceeds to dismantle the target with surgical efficiency, leaving the rest of the ocean to marvel at a mind that can weaponize the biology of its rivals. The underwater world is a continuous wall of sound, but within that acoustic chaos, every killer whale pod possesses a highly unique, unmistakable identity. They do not speak a universal language. Instead, each distinct family unit uses a specific set of calls, whistles, and clicks that form a unique regional dialect, completely separate from any other group in the same territory. These vocal signatures are highly complex, consisting of distinct frequencies and rhythmic patterns that are learned during infancy and maintained throughout the individual's long life. A calf raised in a resident pod in the North Pacific will grow up speaking a dialect that is completely unintelligible to a transient pod swimming through the exact same coastal channels. It is a linguistic barrier that defines their social boundaries. Stand close enough to a hydrophone receiver on a research boat, and you can hear the difference immediately. One group sounds like sharp metallic chirps, while another speaks in long mourning wails that echo through the hull. Biologists still debate whether these dialects are used to prevent genetic inbreeding by helping individuals identify distant relatives during massive regional gatherings. It is an uncanny demonstration of non-human culture, proving that their societies are structured by deep, auditory traditions that run as deep as our own. An orca is not born knowing how to wash a seal off an ice floe or how to safely beach itself to catch a pup. These highly complex behaviors are not encoded in their DNA. They are complex learned skills that must be passed down from mothers to offspring through a deliberate process of cultural transmission and active education that spans decades. The older matriarchs function as the primary school teachers of the ocean, guiding the young calves through simulated hunts where the stakes are low. A mother will intentionally wound a target and release it back into the water, allowing her calf to practice the precise striking angles and tail-slapping techniques required to secure the kill. The learning process is slow, patient, and highly structured. The camera catches a close-up of a young calf watching its mother's movements with intense, focused attention before attempting to replicate the turn itself. Scientists still aren't sure how much of this teaching involves intentional correction, or if the calves simply learn through pure imitation of their elders. This reliance on shared knowledge maps means that if a matriarch dies before passing on her secrets, an entire generation's unique hunting culture can vanish from the ocean forever. The predatory behavior of the killer whale frequently transcends the simple necessity of gathering food, entering a psychological realm that observers find deeply unsettling. When hunting smaller cetaceans like porpoises, a pod will often delay the final kill for hours, engaging in a highly coordinated, violent game where the live target is tossed high into the air using their powerful tail flukes. They bat the animal back and forth between pod members like a ball, striking it with enough force to stun it but keeping it alive long enough to sustain the interaction. This behavior is not conducted with the frantic energy of a feeding frenzy. It is executed with a calm, methodical playfulness that demonstrates an absolute chilling awareness of their cognitive dominance over the target. Up close, the jaws close in a fraction of a second, but only to release the animal for another round of the game. 1 every 2 to 5. Facts. Comparison. The force of these tail flips can launch a 200-pound porpoise over 30 feet into the air, a kinetic display equivalent to a human tossing a baseball with casual ease, demonstrating the immense, terrifying power residing in their muscles. Biologists still debate whether this dark play serves a practical purpose, such as teaching juveniles how to handle fast-moving prey, or if it is simply a manifestation of higher cognitive boredom. In recent years, a new and unprecedented behavioral trend has emerged among killer whale pods navigating the waters around the Iberian Peninsula. A specific group of juveniles, led by an experienced female, has begun launching highly coordinated tactical assaults on the rudders of modern sailing vessels, executing the maneuvers with enough mechanical precision to disable and sink the boats. The strategy is consistent across dozens of encounters. The orcas approach the vessel from the stern, ignoring the hull and focusing their attention entirely on the fiberglass or carbon fiber rudder blade. They use their heads to ram the structure or clamp their jaws down on the edge, pivoting their multi-ton bodies to snap the steering shaft and leave the human crew completely helpless in the open sea. From above, the swarm is a dark river against the green, closing in on the vessel's stern with a quiet, purposeful momentum that sends chills down the spines of the mariners aboard. Scientists still aren't sure whether this phenomenon is a playful fad among the youth or a form of organized retaliation against historical boat strikes in the busy shipping lanes. One light, humorous line where it fits: "It seems the ocean's top accountants have finally decided to audit our maritime travel permits, and the penalty for non-compliance is a long swim back to shore." The open ocean offers plenty of room for a grey whale mother to defend her offspring, but the hunting pod knows how to change the geography of the battle to favor their own strengths. During the annual migration, the killers will herd a targeted mother and calf pair toward narrow underwater canyons or shallow enclosed bays, systematically stripping away their room to maneuver. By blocking the outer exits with their own massive bodies, the orcas create a localized trap where the grey whale mother cannot use the full depth of the water column to hide her calf beneath her belly. The hunters work in structured teams, using their speed to circle the pair continuously, causing the calf to panic and drift away from the protective radius of its parent's massive flukes. Stand close enough to the edge of the coastal cliffs, and you can hear the deep echoing groans of the mother rising through the surf as she realizes the trap has closed. The camera captures the relentless mechanical advance of the black fins slicing through the shallow water with a steady momentum that breaks the spirit of the giant. It is a tactical victory born of spatial manipulation, turning the very architecture of the coast into an execution wall. When hunting massive schools of small fish like herring, a killer whale pod does not simply swim through the school with open mouths, as this would cause the fish to scatter in every direction. Instead, they use a sophisticated herding technique known as carousel hunting, treating the invisible boundaries of the ocean's surface as a physical barrier to trap their food. The pod surrounds the school from below, blowing large rings of bubbles and flashing their bright white underbellies to terrify the fish into a tight, dense ball. They slowly drive this shimmering mass upward, pinning the school against the surface of the water, where the fish can no longer escape by swimming higher. The surface becomes a solid ceiling, locking the school in place. Once the herring are compressed into a helpless vibrating mass, the orcas take turns driving into the center, delivering explosive slaps of their tail flukes to stun hundreds of fish simultaneously. Biologists still debate whether the unique frequency of these tail slaps produces a concussive shockwave that shatters the internal swim bladders of the fish instantly. The hunt is clean, organized, and executed with a calm efficiency that treats the entire school like a simple crop waiting to be harvested. When a killer whale pod commits to taking down a target that possesses dangerous defensive weapons, such as a massive humpback whale or a sharp-toothed sperm whale, they do not risk making a chaotic frontal charge. Their strategy relies on systematic disabling, and the first step in their tactical blueprint often focuses on destroying the target's visual awareness. They coordinate their movements to approach from the absolute blind spots of the giant, using their agility to avoid the swinging pectoral fins. 2 or 3 experienced hunters will dart inward toward the head, targeting the large eyes with precise tearing bites, designed to blind the animal and induce a state of absolute Dishaheen panic that shatters its ability to defend itself. Up close, the jaws close in a fraction of a second, leaving the massive target completely vulnerable to the subsequent phases of the assault. Scientists still aren't sure how this specific anatomical targeting is communicated between pod members during the chaos of a hunt, but the precision is terrifying to observe. By removing the target's ability to see its attackers, the orcas transform a potentially lethal battle into a controlled, predictable exercise in attrition. The auditory acuity of marine mammals is their primary line of defense, but the killer whale has learned how to turn this sensory reliance into a weapon of deception. In several documented research studies, hunting pods have been observed altering their vocalizations to mimic the unique acoustic calls of entirely different marine species, using the sounds as an auditory decoy. A transient pod patrolling a foggy coastline will suppress their own distinct clicks and begin emitting the soft, melodic whistles of a herd of pilot whales or the specific grunts of sea lions. This mimicry tricks nearby prey items into believing that the area is occupied by harmless, non-predatory neighbors, causing them to lower their guard or even swim closer to investigate the source of the sound. From a camera position deep below, you see the hunters moving in a silent, synchronized formation while producing a wall of sound that belongs to a completely different creature. Biologists still debate whether this mimicry is a conscious act of cognitive deception or a learned habit developed by listening to the sounds of their favorite prey items over centuries of coastal interaction. It is a chilling psychological tool that transforms the acoustic landscape of the ocean into a hall of mirrors, where even a familiar voice can lead straight into an ambush. A killer whale pod does not move blindly through its territory, hoping to stumble across food by chance. Their operations are built on real-time intelligence, and during large-scale movements, the family will deploy specific individual members to function as long-range strategic scouts, searching miles ahead of the main body for any sign of prey. These scouts swim in a wide, expansive grid pattern, using their high-definition echolocation systems to sweep the underwater canyons and shallow bays for activity. They remain in constant acoustic contact with the main pod, using low-frequency vocalizations that can travel through the water column for miles without alerting nearby mammals who possess higher frequency hearing ranges. When a scout locates a significant food source, such as a migrating grey whale or a dense gathering of seals, it does not launch an immediate attack. It alters its call frequency, signaling the precise coordinates back to the family, which then closes the distance in a fast-paced, synchronized rush to execute the ambush. It is an operational hierarchy that mirrors the scouting tactics of advanced terrestrial military units, proving that their hunting success is driven by calculated planning rather than random luck. The physical properties of air and water create a unique visual and acoustic barrier when mixed under pressure. Killer whales have mastered this fluid dynamic, using their own respiratory systems to create complex temporary structures known as bubble curtains to disorient, compress, and trap vast schools of fast-moving fish like salmon or mackerel. The technique requires the hunters to circle beneath the school in a tight ascending spiral, exhaling a continuous stream of air from their blowholes as they rise. These rising air bubbles form a thick, shimmering vertical wall that reflects the whale's own acoustic clicks, creating a chaotic echo chamber that shatters the fish's internal navigation systems and prevents them from swimming through the barrier. From above, the swarm is a dark river against the green, tightening its grip around the circular white wall of foam until the fish are compressed into a dense, solid mass at the center. 1 every 2 to 5 facts comparison. This bubble trap acts like an invisible organic net that holds thousands of fish in place without requiring a single strand of fiber. A display of tool use that exists purely within the medium of the sea. It is a clean, non-violent method of containment that maximizes their feeding efficiency. The pure kinetic force contained within the tail flukes of an adult killer whale is capable of generating an underwater phenomenon that goes far beyond a simple physical impact. During a carousel hunt, when the fish are compressed into a tight ball against the surface, an orca will turn its back to the school and deliver a violent, whip-like slap of its tail directly into the dense mass of prey. This motion does not just hit individual fish, it produces a localized acoustic shockwave in the water column, creating a sharp pressure wave that instantly shatters the internal swim bladders and disorients the nervous systems of hundreds of fish simultaneously. The stunned prey drop out of the formation like falling leaves, floating helplessly upside down while the whale turns back to collect them with its teeth. Up close, the jaws close in a fraction of a second around the floating, motionless fish, requiring almost no expenditure of hunting energy. Scientists still aren't sure how the whales manage to control the precise angle of the tail strike to avoid injuring their own fluke tissue against the dense mass of the school. It is a high-speed, mechanical execution that turns a simple locomotive structure into a wide-area acoustic weapon. The global ocean is a dynamic, changing system where traditional feeding grounds can shift or disappear entirely due to variations in climate and water temperature. To survive these ecological disruptions, killer whale pods rely heavily on the generational memory of their oldest matriarchs, who hold a permanent mental logbook of the sea that spans nearly a century of personal experience. When a sudden drop in local salmon populations threatens the survival of a resident pod in the North Pacific, the elder female does not rely on instinct alone. She recalls a specific coastal bay or deep underwater shelf that her own grandmother guided her to during a similar shortage 50 years prior, altering the family's traditional migratory path to lead them safely toward the alternative food source. The camera pans from the weathered, scarred dorsal fin of the old female down to the young calves swimming tightly in her wake, completely dependent on her navigational decisions for their survival. Biologists still debate how this vast repository of spatial and historical knowledge is preserved and shared across generations without the aid of written records. It is a profound demonstration of cognitive endurance, showing that their civilization is anchored by the wisdom of their elders. The education of a young killer whale is a long, deliberate process that requires the mother to shift her own behavior into a highly specialized instructional mode. During a routine hunt for seals or large fish, an experienced mother will not simply execute the target herself. Instead, she will intentionally disable the prey and present it to her calf for practice. The mother will deliver a calculated non-lethal blow with her tail fluke or bite the target's fins to restrict its movement, reducing its ability to escape without killing it outright. She then backs away, positioning her body nearby to monitor the interaction while emitting specific vocalizations that encourage her calf to move inward and practice its own striking angles and jaw placement. Up close, the jaws close in a fraction of a second as the young calf attempts to replicate its mother's grip, occasionally failing and letting the prey slip away before the mother steps back in to secure it. Scientists still aren't sure how much of this instructional behavior is driven by conscious intent or if it is a natural extension of maternal bonding. It is an uncanny display of parental dedication, ensuring that the unique hunting culture of the family is preserved through active hands-on training. When a killer whale pod encounters a prey item that is heavily protected by large aggressive defenders, such as a sea lion harem guarded by a massive alpha male, they do not attempt a direct chaotic assault that could result in injury to their own members. Instead, they implement a sophisticated military blueprint based on distraction and misdirection. The pod splits into two distinct operational teams. The first group, often consisting of younger, highly agile individuals, swims openly near the front of the beach or the edge of the ice, breaching, splashing, and emitting loud vocalizations to draw the attention of the defenders and pull them away from the vulnerable young. Meanwhile, the second group swims in complete phantom silence from the opposite direction, moving beneath the surface to strike the unprotected targets from behind. From above, the swarm is a dark river against the green, split into two perfectly coordinated wings that execute their movements with the synchronized timing of an advanced tactical squad. Biologists still debate how the two groups maintain their timing across long distances without using acoustic signals that could alert the targets. It is a cold, calculated display of strategic intelligence that treats the defense of their rivals as a simple puzzle to be solved through coordination. The modern ocean is increasingly crowded with human-made structures, from massive offshore wind farms to large salmon farming pens anchored in deep coastal bays. While these changes displace many marine species, killer whales have demonstrated an astonishing ability to rapidly modify their traditional hunting methods to turn these human interventions into efficient feeding platforms. Pods in the North Atlantic have learned to patrol the outer perimeters of commercial fish farms, using the heavy netting as an underwater wall to trap wild fish that gather outside the pens to feed on dropped pellets. They have even been observed synchronize their arrival with the operation of fish cleaning machinery on large processing vessels, waiting just behind the drainage pipes to collect the discarded scraps without expending any hunting energy. One light, humorous line where it fits. It seems the ocean's top predators have discovered that ordering takeout from a human fishing boat is far easier than tracking a wild school across miles of open sea. Researchers still debate whether this rapid behavioral adaptation will lead to dangerous levels of dependency or if it is simply another demonstration of their boundless cognitive flexibility. They don't run from our technology. They analyze it, find the vulnerability, and turn it into a menu option. While killer whale families are intensely insular units that maintain strict boundaries between their respective territories, they are fully capable of setting aside their cultural differences when a rare, large-scale opportunity presents itself. When a massive blue whale or a massive school of migratory sharks enters a specific region, multiple unrelated pods will form temporary cooperative alliances to take down the prize. These superpod operations can involve over 60 individual whales from families that speak entirely different vocal dialects and normally avoid each other's company. The individuals organize themselves into a single, unified hunting grid, dividing the labor of the siege with an eerie, unspoken coordination that ensures every group has a role in the final execution. Stand on a research vessel, looking across the horizon, and you see an absolute wall of black fins stretching for miles, moving forward in a synchronized front that changes the ecology of the entire basin for weeks. Once the kill is completed, the meat is shared among the participating families according to a complex social protocol that scientists still don't fully understand. It is a rare display of non-human international diplomacy, proving that their intellect can rise above family tribalism when the reward is grand enough. For a transient killer whale pod that specializes in hunting marine mammals like seals, harbor porpoises, and sea lions, sound is the ultimate enemy. These prey items possess highly developed underwater hearing systems that can easily detect the standard clicks and whistles of a resident fish-eating whale from miles away, giving them plenty of time to escape to the safety of the fish, rocks. To counter this defense, transients employ a strategy known as acoustic camouflage, swimming through their hunting grounds in absolute phantom silence. They turn off their active echolocation entirely, running dark beneath the surface and relying exclusively on their passive hearing and keen eyesight to locate their targets through the murky coastal waters. The camera captures the silent, synchronized rise of three massive black fins breaking the calm surface of a foggy bay without producing a single splash or puff of mist. Scientists still aren't sure how these silent hunters maintain their complex tactical formations across miles of open sea without using vocal cues to coordinate their turns. It is an uncanny, predatory discipline that transforms the ocean into a silent hunting gallery where the target never hears the shadow until the jaws are already closing around its throat. One of the most profound markers of a high-level civilization is the development of specific dietary traditions and cultural preferences that have nothing to do with environmental availability. Killer whales do not eat whatever is closest to them. Instead, each distinct ecotype has evolved an incredibly strict, unyielding cultural diet that they maintain even when surrounded by alternative food sources. A resident pod in the Pacific Northwest will focus exclusively on Chinook salmon swimming through massive schools of fat, slow-moving harbor seals without ever making a single strike toward the mammals. To these fish-eating whales, the seal is not a food item. It is simply a part of the scenery. Conversely, a transient pod in the exact same channel will ignore the salmon entirely, focusing all their energy on hunting the seals because their cultural heritage dictates that they are mammal hunters. Up close, the distinction is absolute and unyielding, passed down through generations of family tradition. Biologists still debate whether this extreme dietary specialization is a mechanism designed to reduce resource competition between different ecotypes, or if it is simply a manifestation of deep, non-human cultural identity. It is an incredible demonstration of choice over instinct, proving that their lives are governed by learned traditions rather than simple predatory drive. The relationship between killer whales and human commercial fishermen has grown increasingly tense in recent decades, shifting from passive avoidance into a state of organized tactical retaliation. In the deep, long-line fisheries of the Southern Ocean, pods have learned to follow fishing vessels for days, waiting for the lines to be reeled in before stripping the valuable toothfish from the hooks. When fishermen attempt to deter the whales by using acoustic scaring devices or changing their course rapidly, the pods respond not by fleeing but by intensifying their coordination. They will deploy specialized teams to surround the vessel, using their bodies to block the lines or creating bubble curtains to hide the hooks from the ship's crew, while they systematically collect the catch with their teeth. From above, the swarm is a dark river against the green, tracking the wake of the massive steel ship with a steady, unhurried momentum that demonstrates their complete lack of fear. One light, humorous line where it fits: "It seems the ocean's real landlords have finally decided to collect the rent, and they don't accept excuses about industrial fishing quotas." This organized opposition proves that when pushed by human encroachment, their intelligence can organize a strategic response that challenges our dominance over the sea. From the frozen ice-choked channels of the high Arctic to the warm, shimmering waters of the equator, a single mammalian empire dominates the marine world. The killer whale possesses a global footprint that is unmatched by any other marine creature, making them the second most widely distributed mammal on the planet, surpassed only by human beings. They do not belong to a single coast or country. They are citizens of the global ocean, claiming every deep trench and shallow bay as their personal domain. This immense geographic reach is a testament to their extraordinary biological and behavioral adaptability. While most whale species are locked into strict, narrow, migratory routes or specific temperature ranges, the orca thrives in every marine ecosystem on Earth. They navigate the stormy, grey swells of the North Atlantic with the same casual ease that they display while swimming through the dense tropical coral reefs of the South Pacific. Stand on any coastline from the rocky cliffs of Scotland to the sandy beaches of South Africa, and you are standing next to a highway that is regularly patrolled by these black and white monarchs. The camera pans out to a wide global map, showing their presence stretching across every time zone and ocean basin in a continuous network of family territories. They have conquered the planet not through physical mutation but through an adaptive intelligence that allows them to find a way to rule wherever water flows. The social architecture of a killer whale family is not built on brute strength or male dominance. It is anchored by a system of ironclad matriarchies, where the oldest females hold absolute authority over the movement and behavior of the pod. An adult male may be twice the size of his mother, possessing a massive dorsal fin that towers over the water. Yet he remains completely subservient to her commands, never making a tactical move without her explicit guidance. The matriarch rules through the power of her experience and the depth of her knowledge maps. She is the one who decides when the family will travel, where they will hunt, and how they will interact with neighboring pods during regional gatherings. Her authority is maintained not through physical violence but through a deep, cultural respect that is hardwired into the psychology of her offspring from the moment of their birth. Up close, you see the old female leading the line, her body covered in the grey scars of a century of ocean life, while the massive males swim submissively at her flanks. Scientists still aren't sure how these matriarchs communicate subtle operational changes to the family across long distances without disrupting the rhythm of their synchronized swimming. 1 every 2 to 5 facts comparison. Her command over the pod carries the weight of a traditional tribal chief, directing an entire multi-ton military unit with the simple, quiet tilt of her tail fluke. In the entire vast catalogue of mammalian life on Earth, the phenomenon of menopause is an extreme evolutionary anomaly. Aside from human beings, there are only a handful of marine species, specifically killer whales, and a few other toothed cetaceans where females permanently stop reproducing midway through their natural lifespans. This biological design serves a profound purpose, retaining elder females to function as living libraries of generational knowledge for the family. A female orca will stop bearing calves around her late 40s, yet she will continue to live for another 4 or 5 decades in the open sea. Freed from the intense physical demands of pregnancy and nursing, these grandmother whales dedicate their remaining years entirely to the survival and education of their extended family. They hold the permanent mental maps of deep-sea reefs, emergency hunting grounds, and shifting current patterns that the pod relies on during catastrophic food shortages. The closing line grows longer and slower. The factual line grows shorter. The camera captures the grandmother swimming shoulder to shoulder with her youngest great-grandcalf, gently nudging the juvenile away from a dangerous shallow sandbar. Biologists still debate how this rare evolutionary trait managed to develop across such different species, but the social reward is undeniable. Her continued survival is a biological insurance policy that preserves the ancient culture of the sea from being forgotten. When kept inside the narrow concrete walls of a marine park tank, the life expectancy of a killer whale drops drastically, with most individuals dying before they reach their 20s. But in the vast, clean currents of the open ocean away from the stress of confinement, these creatures possess an incredible longevity that rivals or even exceeds our own human lifespan. A wild male can easily live to 50 years, while a healthy wild female can survive for 80 or 90 years moving through the sea across multiple human generations. This extended lifespan allows for the development of deep, stable social structures and the transmission of complex cultural traditions that require decades to master. They are not short-lived predators driven by simple instinct. They are ancient observers of the changing Earth. Stand on the deck of a research vessel and look through a long lens at a female known to scientists as Granny, an individual who was estimated to have lived for over a century before her passing. The factual line grows shorter. She swam through the water when steamships were still a novelty, watching the human world transform from the silence of her marine empire. Her long life is a powerful testament to the health and resilience of a mind that is allowed to live in absolute freedom, matching the grand rhythm of the sea itself. The creatures we refer to as killer whales are not a single uniform species moving across a global landscape. Instead, they are divided into several distinct populations known as ecotypes, each possessing unique physical traits, hunting strategies, vocal dialects, and cultural traditions that have separated them for thousands of years. They are so genetically isolated that they do not interbreed, even when their territories overlap in the same coastal channels. In the North Pacific alone, Residents, transients, and offshores move through the water like completely different nations. Residents focus exclusively on fish living in large, stable family pods. Transients are silent phantom hunters that specialize in marine mammals moving in small tactical squads. Offshores remain far out at sea, hunting large schools of sharks and wearing down their teeth on the tough sandpaper skin of their prey. From above, the swarm is a dark river against the green, but it is a river split by ancient cultural boundaries that no individual ever crosses. One light, humorous line where it fits. It is the ultimate underwater version of a high school cafeteria, where the different cliques refuse to sit at the same table or even speak the same language. Biologists still debate whether these ecotypes should be classified as entirely separate species, given that their genetic divide is widening with each passing generation. When two separate family pods of resident killer whales meet after months of traveling in different parts of the ocean, they do not simply mix together in a chaotic feeding frenzy. Instead, they engage in a highly structured, elaborate social ritual known to researchers as a greeting ceremony, displaying a level of formal etiquette that is unique among non-human animals. The two pods will approach each other from a distance of several miles, moving in complete silence. When they are about 100 yards apart, both families will form two long, perfectly straight lines at the surface of the water, facing each other like two opposing armies from a historical era. They will hold this synchronized formation for several minutes, bobbing gently in the swells while observing each other. The closing line grows longer and slower. The factual line grows shorter. Suddenly, the silence is broken as both lines dissolve into an explosion of breaches, tail slaps, and joyful vocalizations, with individuals rushing forward to rub their bodies against their old friends. The camera catches the complex turning shapes beneath the surface as family members pair off to swim in perfect unison. It is a profound display of non-human diplomacy, proving that their social networks are bound by rules of mutual recognition and deep emotional memory. The emotional depth of the killer whale mind is nowhere more visible or more tragic than in their response to the death of their offspring. When a newborn calf dies due to toxic contamination or nutritional stress, the mother does not simply abandon the body to sink into the deep trenches. Instead, she enters a prolonged visible period of mourning that can last for weeks. In a world-famous incident in 2018, a resident mother named Tahlequah carried her deceased calf on her forehead for 17 days, pushing the tiny body through the rough coastal currents for over 1,000 miles. Every time the carcass began to slip down into the dark water, the mother would dive deep to retrieve it, balancing it carefully on her snout as she surfaced to breathe, refusing to leave her child's side. Up close, the heavy, exhausting effort of the mother is palpable, her breathing ragged as she fights the waves to keep her dead calf afloat. The factual line grows shorter. The remaining members of her pod did not leave her behind. They altered their swimming speed to match her slow mourning pace, surrounding her in a protective escort that guarded her during her long grief. It is an unsettling display of pure empathy, revealing a capacity for love and loss that mirrors the heaviest dimensions of our own human experience. In most mammalian societies, young males are driven away from their birth family when they reach maturity, forced to venture out into the world to find their own territory and mates. But inside the matriarchal empire of the orca, a male offspring will never leave the side of his birth mother, remaining an unyielding part of her pod for the entirety of his natural life. Even when a male grows into a massive 8-ton giant with a towering dorsal fin, his primary emotional attachment remains hardwired to his mother. He will hunt with her, travel with her, and sleep alongside her every single day. When the pod mates with members of an unrelated family during regional gatherings, the males return straight to their mother's side as soon as the interaction is completed, family loyalty overriding all other drives. From a camera position tracking the pod through a narrow channel, you see the massive sun constantly positioning his body to shield his smaller mother from the heavy offshore currents. 1 every 2 to 5 facts comparison. This lifelong maternal dependency is so intense that if an older matriarch dies, her adult sons experience a catastrophic drop in their own survival rate, with many dying within a year from what researchers can only describe as a form of broken-hearted grief. The bond is permanent. The navigational capabilities of a killer whale pod transcend the simple boundaries of local coastal waters. These animals operate on a global travel network that requires them to cross thousands of miles of trackless open sea, moving between different continents and climate zones with a precision that outmatches modern human maritime instruments. A pod can travel over 100 miles in a single 24-hour period, maintaining a steady, unwavering heading through heavy storms, thick fog, and complete underwater darkness. They do not drift off course. They utilize a combination of deep acoustic scanning underwater landmarks and a sensitivity to the Earth's magnetic fields to keep their alignment perfect across the empty blue void. The closing line grows longer and slower. The factual line grows shorter. The camera tracks their movement from a satellite view, showing a straight, clean line cutting across the vast expanse of the North Pacific toward a tiny, isolated island reef. Biologists still debate the exact neurological mechanisms that allow them to process these global directional inputs so flawlessly. It is an epic demonstration of spatial mastery, transforming the entire planet's ocean into a perfectly understood backyard where no family ever gets lost. The survival of the fittest is the brutal foundational law of the wild, where any animal that becomes injured, sick, or deformed is quickly left behind to starve or be consumed by predators. But inside the highly evolved social structure of a killer whale pod, this evolutionary cruelty is replaced by a profound collective social safety net that protects the most vulnerable members of the family. Researchers have documented numerous cases of individuals born with severe spinal deformities or missing pectoral flippers who managed to survive into adulthood because their family members actively kept them alive. The pod will intentionally slow their traveling speed to match the pace of the disabled individual, and during a successful hunt, healthy members will tear off choice pieces of meat and bring them directly to their injured relative. Up close, the jaws close in a fraction of a second, but only to gently pass a piece of salmon to a deformed calf that is floating helplessly at the surface. The factual line grows shorter. Scientists still aren't sure how these altruistic tendencies manage to survive the harsh pressures of natural selection. It is a beautiful and humbling manifestation of non-human compassion, proving that their intelligence has allowed them to build a society where the value of a life is measured by the strength of the family's love. While all killer whales share the same basic black and white color blueprint, their geographic separation into different regional ecotypes has led to distinct physical variations that are immediately obvious to a trained observer. They are not stamped out of a single mold. Their bodies have been subtly sculpted by the unique demands of their local environments. The type B orcas of the Antarctic are relatively small, their skin often covered in a dense layer of yellowish diatoms that tints their white patches a distinct olive-green color. They possess massive, rounded pectoral flippers that are built for navigating the dense, ice-choked channels of the frozen south. By contrast, the North Atlantic giants are sleek, massive machines, their skin a deep, polished jet black, and their bodies built for long, high-speed, open ocean pursuits after massive schools of herring. From above, the difference in scale is striking, resembling two completely different models of a high-performance maritime vehicle. One light, humorous line where it fits. It is as if nature started with the same basic factory design, but allowed the regional dealerships to add their own custom body kits and winter tire packages. These physical variations are the outward markers of an ongoing evolutionary split, showing that the global empire is slowly fracturing into distinct biological nations. For a young killer whale, the open ocean is not just a battleground for survival. It is a vast, fluid playground where the daily business of life is conducted through a continuous series of complex social games. Play is not a waste of energy for these intelligent cetaceans. It is the primary mechanism through which the youth practice physical coordination and reinforce their positions within the pod's hierarchy. Juveniles will chase each other through the kelp forests, leap completely out of the water in synchronized breaches, and carry clumps of sea lettuce on their fins like a game of catch. These interactions are highly structured, featuring a subtle body language of posturing and vocalizations that teaches the young whales how to respect the authority of their elders and cooperate with their siblings during future hunts. The camera catches a close-up of two young calves, rolling over each other in the shallow surf, their movements fast but carefully controlled to avoid causing actual injury. The factual line grows shorter. Researchers still debate whether these playful habits are a sign of higher cognitive boredom or a necessary neurological workout for their massive brains. It is a vital aspect of their cultural development, transforming raw physical power into a highly refined, socially cooperative intelligence that keeps the pod unified. The acoustic landscape of the killer whale world is characterized by a fascinating balance between family isolation and regional integration. While every distinct pod maintains its own secret vocal dialect that sets them apart from their neighbors, pods that share the same geographic territory will often participate in a phenomenon known to linguists as sound sharing. They will adopt a small selection of common acoustic calls that act as a shared regional language, allowing completely unrelated family groups to identify each other and maintain a peaceful distance when moving through the same narrow channels. However, even when producing these universal calls, each pod will inject its own unique family accent, altering the pitch or the duration of the whistle in a way that signals their specific identity. Stand close enough to a hydrophone speaker during a seasonal gathering, and you can hear the complex tapestry of voices overlapping in a rich underwater chorus. The closing line grows longer and slower. The factual line grows shorter. The camera records the subtle shifts in the sound waves as one family answers another across the dark water. It is an extraordinary demonstration of non-human linguistics, proving that their vocal traditions are sophisticated enough to carry both personal identity and community belonging across the open sea. Because killer whale families are intensely insular units, where offspring remain with their mothers for life, the problem of genetic inbreeding is a constant systemic threat to their long-term survival. To counter this danger, these highly intelligent creatures have developed a sophisticated system of regional matchmaking that is conducted during massive multi-pod gatherings. When several unrelated resident families meet in a large coastal sound, the social dynamic shifts entirely. The matriarchs monitor the interactions closely, allowing the young adults to mingle and bond with individuals who speak completely different vocal dialects. The males will temporarily leave their mother's side to court females from distant pods, using specific acoustic signatures to verify that they share no recent common ancestors. From above, the superpod looks like a swirling dance of black and white shapes moving in massive synchronized circles that break up the traditional family lines. 1 every 2 to 5 facts comparison. This genetic screening process is as complex as the aristocratic marriage alliances of historical human kingdoms, managed entirely through the medium of sound and social etiquette to ensure the health of the next generation. Once the matchmaking is complete, the families separate, carrying the genetic future of their empire back to their respective territories. With a mouth lined with interlocking conical teeth and a body capable of delivering multi-ton kinetic impacts, an adult killer whale possesses the physical capability to easily crush any member of its own species. Yet inside the natural social structure of the wild pod, serious physical aggression or lethal violence between family members is virtually non-existent. Disputes over food sharing or social positioning do occur, but they are resolved through a system of highly ritualistic, non-lethal dominance displays. A frustrated matriarch will deliver a sharp slap of her jaw against the water's surface, emit an aggressive high-frequency scream, or give a subordinate a gentle rake of her teeth across its flank. These warnings are instantly understood and accepted, restoring order to the group without a single drop of serious blood being spilled. Up close, you see a younger male lower his head and back away submissively after receiving a stern look from his mother, his posture instantly shifting to show compliance. The factual line grows shorter. Scientists still aren't sure how their psychological restraint managed to become so heavily hardwired into their biology. It is a profound manifestation of social intelligence, showing that their communities are governed by a deep internal peace that prevents their immense destructive power from tearing the family apart. The reputation of the killer whale is heavily defined by their apex predatory status, but their cognitive architecture contains a capacity for curiosity and altruism that frequently extends to creatures outside their normal cultural menu. They are fully capable of recognizing that completely different species are not threats or food, treating them with a gentle, protective interest that baffles researchers. There are numerous documented accounts of resident fish-eating orcas interacting peacefully with vulnerable marine mammals, such as guiding lost seal pups away from dangerous rough currents, or swimming alongside human divers without making a single aggressive gesture. They adjust their massive power to accommodate the fragile nature of these non-prey animals, moving with a careful, deliberate restraint that demonstrates a deep awareness of their own physical dominance. The camera tracks a massive male swimming slowly beneath a lone human kayaker, his multi-ton body gliding just inches from the fragile plastic hull without causing a single ripple or tilt. The closing line grows longer and slower. The factual line grows shorter. Biologists still debate whether this behavior is driven by a form of universal empathy or simple intellectual curiosity about the strange visitors to their world. It is a striking reminder that the top hunter of the sea is also an inquisitive observer, moving through the deep with a mind that is capable of choosing peace over violence whenever it pleases. The boundary where the deep water meets the shallow sand is the ultimate nightmare for any large cetacean. When a killer whale becomes disoriented or sick and runs aground on a shallow beach, the event triggers an immediate catastrophic psychological response through the remaining members of its family pod. The family does not swim away to save themselves from the danger. They will gather just outside the surf line, refusing to abandon their stranded relative, while emitting a continuous wall of high-pitched mourning distress calls that can be heard for miles across the empty coastline. The individual on the beach will throw its head back, calling out to its mother in a frantic, desperate rhythm that causes the remaining pod members to swim dangerously close to the shallow breaks in a desperate attempt to reach it. Stand on the wet sand next to the stranded giant, and the sound of the family's collective cries rising through the fog is a heavy, heartbreaking weight that stays with you forever. The factual line grows shorter. The camera captures the constant panicked movements of the whale's eyes locked onto the dark shapes of its kin waiting just beyond the breakers. This intense social loyalty means that a single stranding event can easily transform into a mass tragedy, as the family's refusal to leave each other's side overrides their own basic instinct for survival. When the traditional migratory pathways of the ocean fail and climate disruptions drive the fish or seals away from their historical habitats, a killer whale pod faces the immediate threat of starvation. During these ecological crises, the survival of the entire family depends entirely on the long-term memory and strategic leadership of their elder matriarch. Data collected from satellite tracking tags shows that during years of extreme salmon scarcity, the oldest females will take the lead of the hunting formations, guiding their families far outside their normal territorial boundaries toward deep-sea trenches and isolated reef networks that haven't been visited for decades. She recalls the exact coordinates from a crisis she survived during her own childhood, acting as a living compass that navigates the pod through the barren blue void. The camera catches a close-up of the old matriarch's blowhole clearing the rough water, her steady, unhurried cadence providing a sense of calm reassurance to the hungry calves swimming tightly at her side. The factual line grows shorter. Researchers have verified that pods with an experienced grandmother have a significantly higher survival rate during climate fluctuations than younger families that lack an elder guide. Her memory is the ultimate shield of her line, proving that in the kingdom of the sea, knowledge is the most valuable weapon for survival. The raising of a killer whale calf is not a lonely burden carried by the mother alone. It is a collective, highly coordinated family enterprise that involves every adult member of the matriarchal pod. From the moment a calf is born into the light-filled surface waters, it is surrounded by a protective network of aunts, uncles, and older siblings who share the duties of its care. When the mother needs to dive deep into the underwater canyons to hunt for high-energy food, she does not leave her calf unprotected. She will transfer the juvenile to the care of an older sister or a trusted aunt who will function as a temporary babysitter, keeping the calf safely balanced near her own dorsal fin at the surface. These younger females use this time to practice their maternal skills, preparing for the day when they will lead their own lines. From above, the pod forms a moving cradle around the tiny calf, with adult bodies arranged in a tight defensive wall that protects the infant from any potential offshore predators. One light, humorous line where it fits. It is the ultimate real-world version of an underwater daycare center, except the nannies are all 8-ton apex predators who don't require an hourly fee. This shared responsibility reinforces the social cohesion of the family, ensuring that the future of the lineage is guarded by the collective strength of the entire pod. While the daily life of the killer whale is conducted within the intimate circle of the family pod, there are rare, spectacular moments when the boundaries of their insular world dissolve completely. During the late summer months, when the salmon runs or herring schools reach their absolute peak density, dozens of unrelated families will migrate to the same large sound, forming a massive gathering known to researchers as a superpod. These events can bring together over hundreds of individual whales from multiple distinct cultural lines, transforming the ocean basin into a grand non-human festival. The superpod does not engage in competitive territorial fighting. Instead, they spend days participating in synchronized swimming formations, massive vocal choruses, and intense social mingling that allows the youth to form connections outside their birth family. The closing line grows longer and slower. The factual line grows shorter. The camera pans across the horizon, revealing an absolute forest of black dorsal fins cutting through the silver light of the bay as far as the eye can see. Biologists still debate the full social significance of these massive gatherings, which have been conducted in the same geographic locations for thousands of years. It is a stunning display of global community, proving that beneath their fierce, predatory exterior lies a civilization that is bound together by ancient traditions of peace and mutual recognition. The concept of the food chain is a delicate balance of vulnerability and dominance, but at the very end of that long biological ladder sits a creature that answers to no one. The killer whale holds an undisputed apex status. Across the entire expanse of the global ocean, from the surface waters down to the dark boundaries of the deep trenches, this creature has zero natural predators. Not the great white shark, not the massive sperm whale, not the frozen currents of the polar seas can challenge its security. Every other living thing in the ocean must maintain a constant state of vigilance, balancing its need to feed with the survival instinct to avoid being eaten. But the orca swims with the heavy, unhurried confidence of an absolute monarch. It can sleep in the open sea, travel with its newborn calves across thousands of miles of trackless blue, and vocalize openly without ever risking drawing the attention of a larger, more dangerous rival. The closing line grows longer and slower. The factual line grows shorter. The camera tracks a single male swimming slowly along the edge of a deep underwater drop-off, his massive silhouette stark against the empty blue void. Biologists recognize that this complete absence of natural enemies places a massive ecological responsibility on their shoulders. As their hunting choices dictate the health and balance of the entire marine world, they are the ultimate arbiters of life beneath the waves, moving through the deep with a mind that has never known the paralyzing weight of fear. An 8-ton predator with a jaw capable of crushing bones and an intelligence that outmatches every other marine creature should view a swimming human as nothing more than an easy, vulnerable meal. And yet herein lies the grand paradox of the natural world. Throughout the entirety of recorded human history across every ocean, basin, and coastal channel on Earth, there has been zero verified fatal wild attacks by a killer whale on a human being. They will hunt down massive blue whales, tear the livers from great white sharks, and wash seals off the ice, but when they encounter a human being in the water, they stop. They will swim close enough to touch a diver, look directly into a swimmer's eyes with their massive dark optics, and then gently turn their multi-ton bodies away to avoid causing a single scratch. They actively choose to spare us. Up close, the true mystery of this restraint is humbling, defying the standard laws of predatory biology. The factual line grows shorter. Researchers still debate why these wild killers maintain such an ironclad policy of peace toward our species, with some believing our shape simply doesn't match their ancient cultural menu maps. It is a profound psychological boundary that separates them from every other apex predator on the planet, proving that their interactions with the world are guided by a conscious, calculated decision rather than raw animal instinct. Because they sit at the absolute top of the marine food chain, killer whales are exposed to a hidden systemic danger that is entirely of human origin. This threat is known as bioaccumulation, a process where industrial chemicals, heavy metals, and synthetic toxins dumped into the ocean are absorbed by small fish concentrated inside larger marine mammals, and ultimately stored permanently within the thick blubber layers of the apex hunters. Every time an orca consumes a salmon or a seal, it inherits the lifetime accumulation of pollutants that its prey carried. Over decades of successful hunting, these toxins build up to staggering lethal concentrations within the whale's fat cells, turning their own primary energy reservoir into a ticking biological time bomb. When a mother experiences a food shortage and begins to break down her blubber to produce milk, these concentrated poisons are passed directly into her newborn calf, often killing the infant within its first year of life. The closing line grows longer and slower. The factual line grows shorter. The camera focuses on the sleek, smooth skin of a transient male, looking perfectly healthy from the outside, while carrying an internal toxic load that would instantly paralyze a land animal. Biologists have classified some resident pods as living toxic waste sites. Their bodies so saturated with human chemical history that their carcasses must be handled with hazardous material protocols when they wash ashore. It is a silent, invisible tragedy that proves our industrial footprint can poison the absolute monarchs of the sea without ever firing a single harpoon. The immense physical power and complex hunting strategies of the resident killer whales are completely useless when the fish they rely on simply disappear from the water. In the Pacific Northwest, ancient resident populations are facing a catastrophic collapse driven not by natural disease or shifting currents, but by the relentless pressure of human overfishing that has depleted the wild Chinook salmon stocks they depend on for survival. These fish-eating whales are so intensely bound to their cultural dietary preferences that they will not switch to hunting seals or sea lions, even when their traditional salmon runs vanish completely. They will travel for hundreds of miles through barren channels, their ribs becoming visible beneath their smooth black skin, their calves dying of starvation, while swimming past alternative food sources that their cultural heritage dictates they cannot touch. Stand on the rocky cliffs of the San Juan Islands, and you can hear the thin, weakened blows of a starving family as they search the empty bays for a sign of fish. The factual line grows shorter. The camera captures the hollow dip behind the blowhole of a juvenile, a physical marker known to researchers as peanut head that signals the final stages of nutritional deprivation. It is a heartbreaking conflict between an ancient biological culture and modern industrial appetite, showing that our failure to manage the ocean's resources is systematically dismantling a civilization much older than our own. The universe of the killer whale is built entirely of sound, a delicate web of echolocation, clicks, family dialects, and passive listening that connects them to their environment across miles of open sea. But human industrial civilization has transformed this quiet acoustic sanctuary into a chaotic, deafening wall of noise filled with the continuous thrum of commercial shipping propellers, oil drilling equipment, and the explosive blasts of military sonar. A single blast from a high-frequency naval sonar array can produce an underwater sound wave that travels for hundreds of miles, cutting through the water column with enough concentrated energy to rupture the delicate hearing organs of any cetacean in the area. For an orca, this acoustic pollution is not just a nuisance. It is a form of total sensory blindness that shatters their ability to navigate, hunt, or communicate with their family members. The closing line grows longer and slower. The factual line grows shorter. The camera records the sudden panicked movement of a pod as the distant hum of a cargo ship enters their channel, their synchronized swimming lines dissolving into a chaotic scramble as they try to scream over the noise. Some researchers believe that this continuous acoustic trauma can induce a state of acute panic that drives entire families to strand themselves on shallow beaches rather than endure the deafening pressure of the open sea. We are drowning their ancient voices in a sea of mechanical noise. The relationship between humans and killer whales has not always been defined by captivity and conflict. Along the coast of New South Wales, Australia, during the 19th and early 20th centuries, a remarkable historical event occurred where a wild pod of orcas, led by an old male known as Old Tom, formed a deliberate, cooperative hunting alliance with human whalers in a place called Twofold Bay. The wild killers would locate migrating baleen whales offshore, herding them into the shallow bay and alerting the human whalers on the beach by breaching and slapping their tails against the water. When the whalers launched their wooden boats, the orcas would actively assist in the hunt, swimming alongside the boats to protect the humans from being capsized by the struggling whale and helping to drown the giant by pinning it under the surface. 1 every 2 to 5 fax comparison. This unique maritime partnership functioned with the smooth coordination of a team of trained hunting hounds working alongside a human master, translating the scale of their intelligence into an alliance that reshaped the local economy for generations. In return for their assistance, the whalers practiced the law of the tongue, leaving the carcass secured in the water for 24 hours to allow the orcas to consume their favorite fat-rich parts before reeling the whale in for processing. It stands as a stunning historical record of what is possible when two apex minds choose to trust each other across the boundary of the shoreline. As modern science peers deeper into the social structures, genetic divides, and linguistic complexities of the global killer whale populations, humanity is being forced toward a profound philosophical realization. We are not the only creatures on this planet to possess a rich, complex culture that is passed down through generations of learning and deliberate education. The orca does not navigate the sea by simple, hardwired instinct. Its entire life is guided by a system of social protocols, regional dialects, and specific behavioral choices that meet the formal definition of non-human civilization. Their matriarchies have preserved the knowledge maps of the global ocean for millions of years, maintaining stable, peaceful societies that existed long before the first human cities were carved out of stone. The closing line grows longer and slower. The factual line grows shorter. The camera glides beneath the surface, tracking a multi-generational family as they move forward in a slow, majestic cadence that matches the deep pulse of the tide. Biologists realize that when we look into the eye of an orca, we are not looking at a primitive beast to be managed or contained. We are looking at an ancient, parallel intelligence that has conquered the earth in its own way. Their survival demands that we expand our definition of mind to accommodate a civilization built entirely of sound and shadow. The health and balance of the global ocean are entirely dependent on the continuous pressure-driven interventions of its top predator. If the killer whale populations were to disappear from the water due to toxic contamination, overfishing, or climate disruption, the entire marine ecosystem would experience a catastrophic ecological collapse known as a trophic cascade. Without the orcas to patrol the coastal reefs and open ocean lanes, the populations of large marine mammals like sea lions, harbor seals, and fur seals would expand without check, leading to an immediate, overwhelming demand on the local fish stocks. These massive herds of seals would strip the coastal bays of salmon, herring, and cod, triggering a devastating ripple effect that would leave seabirds, smaller fish, and human coastal communities completely starved of resources. Up close the jaws, close in a fraction of a second, a vital act of natural culling that keeps the entire system vibrant and resilient. The factual line grows shorter. The presence of the king is what keeps the ocean balanced, ensuring that no single species can expand its numbers to the point of destroying its own habitat. Their protection is not a luxury or a sentimental choice. It is a critical ecological necessity that safeguards the living architecture of the global sea from collapsing into chaos. The corporate justification for keeping killer whales in theme park tanks has long been built on the promise of conservation and captive breeding programs designed to preserve the species for future generations. But modern veterinary and behavioral science has proven that these programs fail completely because they cannot replicate the complex, non-human societal structures that define an orca's true identity. In a concrete enclosure, calves are produced by mixing individuals from completely different geographic populations who share no common vocal dialects or cultural histories. The young whales grow up in a sensory void, stripped of the guidance of an experienced grandmother, never learning the ancient hunting secrets or the complex social etiquette that a wild pod relies on for stability. They are biological templates without their cultural software, reduced to stressed, erratic shadows of their wild kin. The closing line grows longer and slower. The factual line grows shorter. The camera catches the dull mechanical movement of a captive-born juvenile floating listlessly at the surface of a blue-painted pool, while a speaker plays artificial pop music to a crowded stadium. One light, humorous line where it fits. It is the biological equivalent of trying to teach a child Shakespeare by locking them in a closet with a copy of a phone book, expecting them to understand the beauty of the language through osmosis. These programs do not preserve the orca. They merely manufacture an empty shell that has forgotten how to speak the language of the sea. In the high latitudes of the Arctic and Antarctic oceans, the entire architecture of the killer whale's hunting territory is bound directly to the freezing cycles of the sea ice. But the rapid acceleration of global climate change is dissolving these frozen networks at a speed that is challenging the adaptive capabilities of even the most resilient pods. As the pack ice melts and retreats farther north each summer, the specialized hunting zones where orcas trap narwhals or use wave-washing tactics to sweep seals off the floes are disappearing into the open blue sea. The lack of structured ice platforms allows prey species to scatter across vast distances, forcing the whales to expend far more energy searching for food while navigating unpredictable storm-tossed currents that threaten the safety of their young calves. From above, the swarm is a dark river against the green, but the green water is rapidly expanding where solid white sheets used to rest on the horizon. The factual line grows shorter. Biologists are monitoring these polar shifts with growing alarm, realizing that the rapid loss of ice is not just changing the temperature of the water, it is erasing the physical stage where their unique hunting cultures have been performed for thousands of years. The monarchs of the ice are losing their kingdom, one melting block at a time. The cognitive depth of the killer whale mind is nowhere more evident than in their ability to analyze and categorize the different human activities that enter their maritime territory. They do not view all ships as a single uniform threat. Instead, they display an acute awareness of human presence that allows them to distinguish between different types of vessels based on their behavior and sound signatures. A resident pod in the North Pacific will actively avoid the heavy, low-frequency thrum of a commercial fishing vessel, knowing from experience that these boats deploy dangerous nets and compete for the same salmon stocks. But when a small, quiet research boat approaches with its engines idling, the same whales will frequently alter their course to swim closer, bringing their calves to the surface to inspect the scientists with a calm, curious interest that borders on recognition. The camera captures a close-up of a massive female surfacing right next to the hull of a research dinghy, holding her head out of the water, in a position known as a spy hop to look directly at the cameras. The factual line grows shorter. They have mapped our behavior just as we have mapped theirs, categorizing our technology into distinct categories of threat, utility, and curiosity. This capacity to read our intentions proves that they are active observers of our species, tracking our movements through their world with an intelligence that is constantly analyzing our choices. While they possess the agility and speed to outrun almost any natural danger in the water, killer whales are increasingly vulnerable to a mechanical hazard that leaves them no room for evasion. As global maritime trade expands, the shipping lanes that cross through their traditional coastal feeding grounds are filled with massive container ships and high-speed ferries that move through the water with catastrophic momentum. The result is a rising toll of ship strikes, where these massive steel hulls collide with sleeping or feeding whales before the animals can sense the danger or clear the path. The impact of a multi-ton propeller blade can inflict horrific lethal wounds, shattering the dense spinal vertebrae, rupturing the internal organs, or severing the powerful tail flukes that the whale relies on to swim and hunt. Stand on the deck of a Coast Guard cutter as they tow a deceased male toward the shore, the body marked by a series of deep parallel lacerations that run across the entire length of the back. The closing line grows longer and slower. The factual line grows shorter. The camera records the quiet, heavy stillness of the carcass, a stark contrast to the explosive energy the animal possessed just hours before. It is a tragic intersection of the ancient biological world and modern commercial speed, showing that even the top ruler of the sea can be broken in an instant by the unyielding weight of human transport. To a human observer, the killer whale is a creature of the surface, celebrated for its spectacular breaches, high-speed chases, and dramatic coastal hunts. But oceanographic research using advanced digital archival tags has revealed that these predators possess a secret relationship with the unknown depths, frequently launching vertical descents that plunge them straight into the pitch-black, freezing waters of the bathypelagic zone. An orca can dive down to over 1,200 feet, descending into the crushing pressure of the deep canyons, where the water temperature sits just above freezing and the light of the sun never penetrates. They do not make these deep plunges out of random curiosity. They are hunting the large, high-energy species that hide in the dark, including deep-sea squid bottom-dwelling halibut, and massive sleeper sharks that move through the abyss like slow ghosts. The closing line grows longer and slower. The factual line grows shorter. The camera pans from the bright sunlit surface down into the heavy midnight blue of the canyon walls where the whale's acoustic clicks echo through the void. Scientists still aren't sure how their massive lungs and blood chemistry manage to withstand the intense, shifting pressures of these rapid vertical transits without experiencing decompression sickness. It is a stark reminder that the master of the sea is fully capable of invading the abyss, extending its predatory empire into the most mysterious and inhospitable realms of the living planet. The definition of a person has historically been limited exclusively to human beings, but the expanding scientific understanding of cetacean intelligence is driving a legal revolution across the modern world. In courtrooms from North America to New Zealand, teams of international lawyers and environmental philosophers are fighting landmark battles to grant killer whales the status of legal personhood. This legal shift would move the orca out of the category of property, where they are treated as simple assets to be owned, bought, and displayed by marine parks, and place them into the category of legal persons who possess the fundamental right to liberty, bodily integrity, and protection of their natural habitat. It is a radical challenge to our legal traditions, arguing that a mind of such cognitive and emotional complexity deserves the same baseline protections that we afford to our own species. Up close, you see the intensity of the debate, a clash between corporate entertainment interests and a new wave of biological ethics that challenges our dominance over the wild. The factual line grows shorter. If these legal battles succeed, it will permanently change how humanity interacts with the natural world, forcing our laws to recognize that we share this planet with other sovereign nations that possess their own ancient rights to freedom. It is a struggle for legal recognition that carries the weight of a historic civil rights movement unfolding beneath the surface of the sea. Because they possess a natural lifespan that can span nearly a century-older killer, whales have lived through a period of human industrial expansion that has completely rewritten the landscape of the global coastlines. They have acted as silent witnesses to our history, watching their quiet, pristine feeding bays be transformed into noisy centers of commercial shipping, urban runoff, and heavy industrial development. A 90-year-old matriarch swimming through the waters of Puget Sound was a juvenile when the first massive steel bridges were constructed over her channels, when the commercial fishing fleets were small wooden boats, and when the underwater world was free of the mechanical hum of container ships. She has guided her family through decades of human noise, mapping the location of every new harbor, factory drain, pipe, and military installation that has altered the architecture of her home. The camera tracks the old female as she swims past the concrete pillars of a massive industrial shipping terminal, her black fin cutting through the oil-tinted surface of the harbor. The closing line grows. The factual line grows shorter. She carries the memory of an older, quieter ocean inside her massive brain, a living link to a past that humanity has paved over in our race for progress. Her continued presence in these crowded industrial waters is a powerful reminder that we are not building our cities in a vacuum. We are expanding our empire straight over the traditional homelands of an ancient marine nation that is watching our every move. The most compelling question that remains unanswered by modern cetacean science is not found in their anatomy or their genetic codes. It is found in the deep, unexplained psychology of their behavior toward us. There are numerous documented encounters where wild killer whales have approached vulnerable human swimmers, kayakers, or stranded sailors in remote waters, under conditions where the humans were completely helpless and isolated. In every single instance, the orcas have responded with a calm, gentle restraint that defies the normal rules of apex predatory behavior. They will slow their movements, tuck their massive pectoral flippers inward to avoid striking the human, and circle the individual with a quiet, inquisitive patience that looks less like a hunting inspection and more like a form of mutual recognition. They look at us and see something that demands a policy of peace. Stand on a remote shoreline as a wild pod swims into a group of open water swimmers, the massive black fins rising right alongside the human limbs, without causing a single moment of aggression or panic. The factual line grows shorter. This profound mystery is the ultimate testament to the scale of their intelligence, suggesting that they possess a moral or social code that recognizes a common bond with our species. It is a humbling and beautiful reality that challenges our understanding of the wild, proving that the top hunter of the sea has chosen to meet our vulnerability with absolute grace. The survival of the killer whale is not an isolated environmental issue that can be solved by simply closing a few marine parks or passing a few local fishing regulations. Because they operate as global indicators of marine health, tracking the accumulation of toxins across every ocean basin, the fate of their populations carries the weight of our shared future. If we allow the resident pods to starve into extinction due to our overfishing, if we poison their blubber layers with our industrial chemicals, and if we drive them mad with the continuous noise of our shipping lanes, we are signing the death warrant for the entire global ocean. Their downfall will be the final signal that we have broken the biological machinery of the planet beyond its capacity to recover, leaving a silent Dead Sea behind us. The camera pans up from the turning shapes of a wild pod out to a wide cinematic view of the Earth, showing the global ocean connecting every continent in a single breathing network of life. The factual line grows shorter. The choice is ours to make. By protecting their territories and restoring the wild fish runs they rely on, we are not just saving a magnificent predator. We are safeguarding the living systems that sustain all life on Earth. Their survival is the ultimate metric of our own success as a species, proving that we have the wisdom to share this world with the ancient minds that rule the deep. When all the facts are collected, all the acoustic calls are recorded, and all the hunting strategies are mapped, we are left with a single ultimate truth that transcends the boundaries of traditional biology. When we look down into the clear green water at the shifting silhouette of a killer whale, we are not looking at a primitive animal driven by simple hunger or hardwired reflex. We are looking at an ancient parallel intelligence that has spent millions of years mastering the global ocean, building a society structured by family loyalty, linguistic traditions, and a conscious policy of peace toward our species. They are the wolves of the sea, the undisputed monarchs of the deep, moving through their liquid empire with a deep emotional sensitivity and an operational genius that rivals the highest dimensions of our own human mind. The closing line grows longer and slower. The factual line grows shorter. The camera drops beneath the surface for the final shot, capturing a massive matriarch as she turns her head slightly to fix her dark, intelligent eye directly onto the lens before sliding away into the deep blue void. We are not alone on this planet. Our cities may cover the dry land, but just beyond the edge of the shore, in the black, freezing currents of the global sea, an ancient mind is swimming, watching our progress and looking right back at us through the dark water.